Hello and welcome to another edition of Zog Science. It's been a little while. Today we're going to be looking at community interactions that can occur within ecosystems. So one of the major types of community interaction that we see that happens with most organisms is competition. So for example, these two flowering plants are competing for the same space and the same resources in terms of sunlight. Which means that both of them are going to be harmed to some extent from that competition. So competition is when two organisms use the same space and resources at the same time, and competition can occur within species. We talked about that when we talked about evolution, how competition drives natural selection, but it can also occur between different species, right? So with organisms within a species or different species can be competing for the same space. We've mentioned this principle before. The competitive exclusion principle states that no two species can occupy the same niche in the same habitat at the same time. So they must have slightly different niches in order for them to both be around. Otherwise, one of them is going to eventually evolve better or be able to survive better in that particular niche and will push the other one out. So let's take a look at some examples of competition. First one is this plant called Kudzu, and it was first introduced to the United States in 1876. It is what we call an invasive species, and we'll talk more about invasive species later on. But what it does is that it outcompetes other native plants. It doesn't really have as many predators here in, or not necessarily predators, but as many consumers that are eating it here in the United States. And as such, it has grown a lot. You see it a lot along roadsides and in a lot of other places. It's very prevalent here in North Carolina. We also have house sparrows, which again is an invasive or introduced species that have pushed out the bluebirds, and they will actually kill the bluebirds themselves and their young in order to get the resources that they need. We also have other community interactions. So we've got mutualism. An example of mutualism is clownfish and the sea anemone from Finding Nemo, right? So the clownfish gets protection from the anemone and in return protects the anemone from fish that would eat it, aka the angelfish. And the clownfish keeps the anemone free of dirt and debris, so it helps keep it clean. So what is mutualism? Well, it's a relationship where two organisms are going to both benefit from that relationship, okay? And this can involve providing food or protection, someplace to live. Pollination is an example of mutualism because the pollinator gets food and then the plant gets to reproduce, which is pretty important. So a really important example of mutualism is lichens, and lichens consist of a fungus and an algae both together. And as we learned, fungi are heterotrophic. So what this allows is that the algae can produce food for both of them, and then the fungus provides a little habitat for the algae. So the algae would not be able to survive living on rocks on its own. It has to have the fungi to help protect it and kind of create an environment that it is suitable to live in. Another example is cleaner fish. So these shrimp cleaning shrimp that will clean fish. But basically what they do is they set up cleaning stations, and fish will come, and there are parasites that are either on the inside of their mouths or on their skin, and the shrimp will eat the parasites, which is obviously good for the shrimp because they get food, and then the fish are no longer have parasites. So both are benefiting. So again, here are your shrimp just kind of hanging out on the fish. Ants and aphids have a mutualistic relationship as well. The aphids will produce food for the ants, and the ants will protect the aphids. So yeah, aphids feed on the sap of the plant they're on. The ants use their antennae to stimulate the aphids, which we see right here, and they kind of, again, extract a little substance. If you have seen the movie Ant Z, I believe that they have an aphid bar, so that would be where they got that information from. And basically, the worker ants go around, going around and collecting the honeydew, and then they feed it to the rest of the colony. So. All right, sea slug and algae. The algae lives inside the sea slug and makes food for both of them, and then in return it gets a place to live. So again, just helping each other out. Both are going to benefit. That's the main thing for mutualism. Nitrogen-fixing nodules. Okay, so we just talked about nitrogen and how the fact that most of the nitrogen in the atmosphere is N2, or in the world is N2, which is in a form that is too stable. It is inert. We as living things cannot use it. So we do have these nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and what they will do is that they will take nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and change it into ammonia, which eventually gets changed into a nitrate, which the plants can actually then use. We then eat the plants, or other consumers eat the plants, and then we eat those animals, and we get the nitrogen that we need. So these nitrogen-fixing nodules, many of them are kind of on the plants themselves. And so what happens is that the plant protects the bacteria from oxygen. So the plant keeps oxygen away from the bacteria, which is harmful to them. And then the bacteria will supply nitrogen to the plant. Pollination is a classic example of mutualism. Again, we kind of talked about how that worked earlier. But the pollinator gets fed, and then the plants get to reproduce. Here's all the pollen. As we are all experiencing right now, there's a lot of pollen in the air. Hopefully these storms will clear that out. These protozoans in a cow's stomach, cows do not really on their own have the ability, nor do we, to break down cellulose, which is what makes up the cell walls of plants. And so the protozoa and bacteria help both cows and other ungulates or animals with hooves to break down the plant matter that they are eating. Obviously, the protozoans get a place to live, the bacteria get a place to live, and the cow gets nutrients. So that would be mutualism. Ants in the acacia tree. So what happens here is that the ants will actually kind of burrow into the thorns, and they will live inside the plant. And then when other animals or insects try and come to eat the plant, the ants will attack them and drive them off. So the plant gets protection, and the ants get a place to live along with some food. The acacia tree secretes some food for the ants as well. Again, if the ants were poisoned, then the plants died because they didn't have their protection anymore. Sad. Oxpeckers eat parasites from mammals, and they are not just on oxes. They also can be found on zebras or on antelope. Similar thing to mutualism, or close to mutualism, is commensalism. And there is some debate right now as to whether or not commensalism is actually a type of community interaction. We are going to say that it is until evidence is proven otherwise, but sometimes it is unclear as to whether or not it is exactly a community interaction, or if it's just like parasitism or mutualism that we don't understand yet. But in this case, the cattle egret, what it does is it hangs out on the back of cattle. The cattle walk around, they stir up insects like grasshoppers, and then the cattle egret will eat the insects. Cow doesn't seem to really get any benefits from it that we understand at this point, but the cattle egret gets some food. So commensalism relationships are where one organism benefits and basically nothing happens to the other one. They're neither harmed nor benefited. So another example of commensalism would be a shark and a remora. So a remora is a type of fish, and basically it hangs out near the shark. The shark eats its food, little bits and pieces. The shark doesn't swallow. The remora will eat. We're not really sure why sharks don't eat the remora, but they don't. So again, that's kind of what it looks like. It's got a sucker on it to kind of hold it onto the shark. Also, whales and barnacles. So some barnacles will grow on the tails of whales. Remember, barnacles are actually arthropods. They're very closely related to crustaceans, like crabs. And what they do is that they will attach, and then they will grow on whales. And obviously, the barnacle gets helped out because it gets a place to live. It gets to move around. It's not just sitting in one place. The whale doesn't appear to be harmed. Nothing bad seems to happen to whales that have tons of barnacles. So, again, it could be mutualism. We just don't understand why or how. Same thing, barnacles growing on mussel shells. They grow on all kinds of things. And then we've got parasitism, which is all of our favorites because it's all the cool ones. So parasitism is, in this case, adult wasp will insert its eggs beneath the skin of a hornworm larva, and the eggs will then hatch, and then the young feed on the hornworm. So basically, they inject their young directly into it. The eggs hatch, and then they will eat the caterpillar inside out. They don't necessarily just do this to caterpillars. They do it to all types of different things. So parasitism is a relationship where one individual is benefited and the other is harmed. It doesn't usually make sense for a parasite to kill their host, although there certainly are examples of this, because doing so would ultimately harm the parasite. So cowbirds, I think I mentioned this to one of the classes. Cowbird females lay their eggs in the nest of other species. So now the other species believes that that is their child. The cowbird young are very aggressive when the mothers come back to feed their own young, and they will actually outcompete those young for the food. So they will grow bigger, and birds tend to feed the birds, the young that have the largest mouth, because they're the ones that are healthier. So the cowbirds are bigger, so they get to grow faster, and they are benefited. The eggs of the young of the other species is harmed. Mistletoe is actually a plant parasite. We have some lovely examples of mistletoe in our outside. If you are on the hill, the trees kind of at the bottom of the hill, they have lots of mistletoe in them. So you can check that out next winter. Basically, it lives on the branches of other trees, and it will take nutrients from the tree. Also, heartworms for your dog. So if you have a dog, then you have to give them heartworm medication. The worm larvae are transferred from dog to dog through infected mosquitoes. Insects a lot of times will transport parasites from one place to another. A good example is malaria is a protozoa that is transferred from human to human via a mosquito. All right, and but anyways, the heartworms, what they do is that they will travel. The larva will travel from wherever the mosquito bit the dog into the heart, through the circulatory system, and eventually they will hatch and start to grow. And this is a heart that is full of heartworms from a dog. So that's why you got to give your dogs heartworm medication. Our final relationship is predator-prey, and this one is also one of everybody's favorites because it's things eating other things, which, I mean, obviously we like to do that because food is delicious. And in this relationship, we've got a spider that is eating an insect that is trapped. So in predator-prey relationships, one organism benefits and the other is killed. Okay, so it's a little different from parasitism, in that in parasitism you're generally not having the organism that is harmed killed because the host, the parasite, needs some food. We call it a parasite and a host. Whereas in predator-prey, one is definitely dying. And cheetahs obviously are predators along with humans and many other species. And that's all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.